We're continuing our reading of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, and just now we're at Canto 3, Chapter 11, Calculation of Time by the Atom, and we're taking up, Samyaprash, where?
Verse
19. The duration of the Satya millennium equals 4,800 years of the demigods. The duration of the Treta millennium equals 3,600 years of the demigods. The duration of the Dwapara millennium equals 2,400 years. And that of the Kali millennium is 1,200 years of the demigods. Purport, as aforementioned, 1 year of the demigods is equal to 360 years of the human beings. The duration of the Satya Yuga is therefore 4,800 times 360, or 1,728 million years. The duration of the Treta Yuga is 3,600 times 360, or 1,296 million years. Pardon me? 1,296,000, thank you. The duration of the Dwapara Yuga is 2,400 times 360, or 864,000 years. And at the last, let's hear it for Kali Yuga, yay! And the last, the Kali Yuga, is 1,200 times 360, or 432,000 years. 20. The traditional periods before and after every millennium, which are a few hundred years, as aforementioned, are known as Yuga Sandhyas, or the conjunctions of two millenniums. According to the expert astronomers, in those periods all kinds of religious activities are performed. Ovadura, in the Satya millennium, mankind properly and completely maintained the principles of religion, but in other millenniums, religion gradually decreased by 1/part as irreligion was proportionately admitted. Purport, in the Satya millennium, complete execution of religious principles prevailed. Gradually the principles of religion decreased by 1/part in each of the subsequent millenniums. In other words, at present, there is 1 part religion and 3 parts irreligion. Therefore, people in this age are not very happy. Outside of 3 planetary systems, Swarga, Martya, and Patala, the 4 yugas multiplied by 1,000 comprise 1 day on the planet of Brahma. A similar period comprises a night of Brahma in which the creator of the universe goes to sleep. Purport, when Brahma goes to sleep in his nighttime, the 3 planetary systems below Brahmaloka are all submerged in the water of devastation. In his sleeping condition, Brahma dreams about the Garbhodakshai Vishnu and takes instruction from the Lord for the rehabilitation of the devastated area of space. After the end of Brahma's night, the creation of the 3 worlds begins again in the daytime of Brahma, and they continue to exist through the life durations of 14 consecutive Manus, or fathers of mankind. Purport, at the end of the life of each Manu, there are shorter dissolutions also. Each and every Manu enjoys a life of a little more than 71 sets of 4 millenniums. Purport, the duration of life of a Manu comprises 71 sets of 4 millenniums, as described in the Vishnu Purana. The duration of life of 1 Manu is about 852,000 years in the calculation of the demigods, or in the calculation of human beings, 306,720,000 years. After the dissolution of each and every Manu, the next Manu comes in order, along with his descendants, who rule over the different planets. But the 7 famous sages and demigods like Indra and their followers, such as the Gandharvas, all appear simultaneously with Manu. Purport, there are 14 Manus in 1 day of Brahma, and each of them has different descendants. In the creation, during Brahma's day, the three planetary systems, Swarga, Martya, and Patala, revolve. And the inhabitants, including the lower animals, human beings, demigods, and pitas, appear and disappear in terms of their fruitive activities. In each and every change of Manu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appears by manifesting his internal potency in different incarnations as Manu and others. Thus he maintains the universe by discovered power. At the end of the day, under the insignificant portion of the mode of darkness, the powerful manifestation of the universe merges in the darkness of night. By the influence of eternal time, the innumerable living entities remain merged in that dissolution, and everything is silent. Purport: this verse is an explanation of the night of Brahma, which is the effect of the influence of time in touch with an insignificant portion of the modes of material nature in darkness. The dissolution of the three worlds is effected by the incarnation of darkness, Rudra, represented by the fire of eternal time which blazes over the three worlds. These three worlds are known as Bhuva, and Swa, Patala, Martya, and Swarga. The innumerable living entities merge into that dissolution, which appears to be the dropping of the curtain of the scene of the Supreme Lord's energy, and so everything becomes silent. When the night of Brahma ensues, all the three worlds are out of sight, and the sun and the moon are without glare, just as in the due course of an ordinary night. It is understood that the glare of the sun and moon disappear from the sphere of the three worlds, but the sun and the moon themselves do not vanish. They appear in the remaining portion of the universe, which is beyond the sphere of the three worlds. Wow. The portion in dissolution remains without sun rays or moon glow. It all remains dark and full of water, and there are indefatigable winds, as explained in the following verses. It is understood that the glare of the sun and moon disappear from the sphere of three worlds, but the sun and moon themselves do not vanish. Wow. The devastation takes place due to the fire emanating from the mouth of Sankarsana, and thus great sages like Bhrigu and other inhabitants of Maharloka transport themselves to Janaloka, being distressed by the warmth of the blazing fire which raises through the three worlds below. Talk about global warming. At the beginning of the devastation, all the seas overflow and hurricane winds blow very violently. Thus the waves of the seas become ferocious, and in no time at all the three worlds are full of water. It is said that the blazing fire from the mouth of Sankarsana rages for 100 years of the demigods, or 36,000 human years. Then for another 36,000 years there are torrents of rain accompanied by violent winds and waves, and the seas and oceans overflow. These reactions of 72,000 years are the beginning of the partial devastation of the three worlds. People forget all these devastations of the worlds and think themselves happy in the material progress of civilization. This is called Maya, or that which is not. The Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, lies down in the water on the seat of Ananta with his eyes closed, and the inhabitants of the Janalok planets offer their glorious prayers unto the Lord with folded hands. We should not understand the sleeping condition of the Lord to be the same as our sleep. Here the word Yoga Nidra is specifically mentioned, which indicates that the Lord's sleeping condition is also a manifestation of his internal potency. Whenever the word yoga is used, it should be understood to refer to that which is transcendental. In the transcendental stage, all activities are always present, and they are glorified by prayers of great sages like Bhrigu. Thus the process of the exhaustion of the duration of life exists for every one of the living beings, including Lord Brahma. One's life endures for only 100 years in terms of the times in the different planets. Every living being lives for 100 years in terms of the times in different planets for different entities. These 100 years of life are not equal in every case. The longest duration of 100 years belongs to Brahma, but although the life of Brahma is very long, it expires in the course of time. Brahma is also afraid of his death, and thus he performs devotional service to the Lord just to release himself from the clutches of the illusory energy. Animals, of course, have no sense of responsibility. But even humans who have developed a sense of responsibility while away their valuable time without engaging in devotional service to the Lord. They live merrily, unafraid of impending death. This is the madness of human society. The madman has no responsibility in life. Similarly, a human being who does not develop a sense of responsibility before he dies is no better than the madman who tries to enjoy material life very happily without concern for the future. It is necessary that every human being be responsible in preparing himself for the next life, even if he has a duration of life like that of Brahma, the greatest of all living creatures within the universe. The 100 years of Brahma's life are divided into two parts, the first half and the second half. The first half of the duration of Brahma's life is already over, and the second half is now current. Purport: the duration of 100 years in the life of Brahma has already been discussed in many places in this work, and it is described in Bhagavad Gita 8:17 also. 50 years of the life of Brahma are already over, and 50 years are yet to be completed. Then, for Brahma also, death is inevitable. In the beginning of the first half of Brahma's life, there was a millennium called Brahmakalpa, wherein the Lord appeared. The birth of the Vedas was simultaneous with Brahma's birth. According to Padma Purana, Prabhasa Kanda, in 30 days of Brahma, many kalpas take place, such as the Varaha Kalpa and Pitri Kalpa. 30 days make 1 month of Brahma, beginning from the full moon to the disappearance of the moon. 12 such months complete 1 year, and 50 years complete 1 parada, or 1/2 the duration of the life of Brahma. The Shvetavaraha appearance of the Lord is the first birthday of Brahma. The birth date of Brahma is in the month of March, according to Hindu astronomical calculations. This statement is reproduced from the explanation of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Text 36. The millennium which followed the first Brahma millennium is known as the Padma Kalpa, because in that millennium the universal lotus flower grew out of the navel reservoir of water of the personality of Godhead, Hari. The millennium following the Brahma Kalpa is known as the Padma Kalpa because the universal lotus grows in that millennium. The Padma Kalpa is also called the Pitru Kalpa in the Puranas. 37. O descendant of Bharata, the first millennium in the second half of the life of Brahma is also known as the Varaha millennium because the personality of Godhead appeared in that millennium as the hog incarnation. The different millenniums known as the Brahma, Padma, Varaha kalpas appear a little puzzling for the layman. There are some scholars who think these kalpas to be one and the same. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, the Brahma Kalpa in the beginning of the first half appears to be the Padma Kalpa. We can, however, simply abide by the text and understand that the present millennium is in the second half of the duration of the life of Brahma. Simplified. The duration of the two parts of Brahma's life, as above mentioned, is calculated to be equal to 1 nimesha, less than a second, for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is unchanging and unlimited and is the cause of all causes of the universe. That's pretty short for Brahma's life. The great sage Maitreya has given a considerable description of the time of different dimensions, beginning from the atom up to the duration of the life of Brahma. Now he attempts to give some idea of the time of the unlimited personality of Godhead. He just gives a hint of his unlimited time by the standard of the life of Brahma. The entire duration of the life of Brahma is calculated to be less than a second of the Lord's time. And it is explained in the Brahma Samhita 548 as follows: Yashaika nishvasita kāla matava jivanti loma vilaja jagadandanatha Vishnur Mahansa ihayasya kala vishesho Govindamadi purusham tamaham. I worship Govinda, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, whose plenary portion is Mahavishnu. All the heads of the innumerable universes, the Brahmas, live only by taking shelter of the time occupied by one of his breaths. The impersonalists do not believe in the form of the Lord, and thus they would hardly believe in the Lord's sleeping. Their idea is obtained by a poor fund of knowledge. They calculate everything in terms of man's capacity. They think that the existence of the Supreme is just the opposite of active human existence. Because the human being has senses, the Supreme must be without sense perception. Because the human being has a form, the Supreme must be formless. And because the human being sleeps, the Supreme must not sleep. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, however, does not agree with such impersonalists. It is clearly stated herein that the Supreme Lord rests in Yoga Nidra, as previously discussed. And because he sleeps, naturally he must breathe. And the Brahma Samhita confirms that within his breathing period, innumerable Brahmas take birth and die. There is a complete agreement between the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and the Brahma Samhita. Eternal time is never lost along with the life of Brahma. It continues, but it has no ability to control the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because the Lord is the controller of time. In the spiritual world, there is undoubtedly time, but it has no control over activities. Time is unlimited, and the spiritual world is also unlimited, since everything there exists on the absolute plane. 39. Eternal time is certainly the controller of different dimensions, from that of the atom up to the superdivisions of the duration of Brahma's life. But nevertheless, it is controlled by the Supreme. Time can control only those who are body conscious, even up to the Satyaloka or the other higher planets of the universe. This phenomenal world is expanded to a diameter of 4 billion miles as a combination of 8 material elements transformed into 16 further categories within and without as follows. Purport. As explained before, the entire material world is a display of 16 diversities and 8 material elements. The analytical studies of the material world are the subject matter of Sankhya philosophy. The first 16 diversities are the 11 senses and 5 sense objects, and the 8 elements are the gross and subtle matter, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and ego. All these combined together are distributed throughout the entire universe, which extends diametrically to 4 billion miles. Besides this universe of our experience, there are innumerable other universes. Some of them are bigger than the present one, and all of them are clustered together under similar material elements, as described below. 41. The layers of elements covering the universes are each 10 times thicker than the one before, and all the universes clustered together appear like atoms in a huge combination. The coverings of the universe are also constituted of the elements of earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and each is 10 times thicker than the one before. The first covering of the universe is earth, and it is 10 times thicker than the universe itself. In the universe is 4 billion miles. If the universe is 4 billion miles in size, then the size of the earthly covering of the universe is 4 billion times 10. The coverings of water is 10 times greater than the earthly covering. The covering of fire is 10 times greater than the watery covering. The covering of air is 10 times greater than that of the fire. This covering of ether is 10 times greater still than that of air, and so on. The universe within the coverings of matter appears to be like an atom in comparison to the coverings. And the number of universes is unknown, even to those who can estimate the coverings of the universes. Is it as big as my well? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is therefore said to be the original cause of all causes. Thus, the spiritual abode of Vishnu is eternal without a doubt. And it is also the abode of Mahavishnu, the origin of all manifestations. Purport: Lord Mahavishnu, who is resting in Yoga Nidra on the causal ocean and creating innumerable universes by his breathing process, only temporarily appears in the Mahatattva for the temporary manifestation of the material worlds. He is a plenary portion of Lord Sri Krishna, and thus, although he is non-different from Lord Krishna, his formal appearance in the material world is as an incarnation is temporary. The original form of the personality of Godhead is actually the Sarup, or real form, and he eternally resides in the Vaikuntha world, Vishnu Loka. The word Mahatmana is used here to indicate Mahavishnu, and his real manifestation is Lord Krishna, who is called Parama, as confirmed in the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna, Sakchit Ananda Vigraha, Anadir Adhir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Supreme Lord is Krishna, the original personality of Godhead, known as Govinda. His form is eternal, full of bliss and knowledge, and he is the original cause of all causes. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 11th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled Calculation of Time by the Atom. Sadhu, sadhu. We have a public service announcement that there are 5 forests on the eastern side of Vrindavan: Bhadra, Bilva, Loha, Bandira, Mahavana. And across the Jamuna on the western side there are 7 forests: Madhu, Tala, Kumuda, Bahula, Kamya, Kadira, Kadira, and reflections or questions? 1, 2. Hare Krishna.
What is Mahatattva?
What is Mahatattva? That is the substance that is the nondescript substance that is the coagulates when time, the 3 modes of material nature, energize it, and it comes into the as the substrate, the substance that becomes developed into the material world and its different divisions.
Thank you.
have a reflection from the purport to verse 31, where Srila Prabhupada writes at the end of the purport, people forget all these devastations of the worlds and think themselves happy in the material progress of civilization. This is called Maya, or that which is not. So I was thinking about how this is a misapplication of the idea of this too shall pass. So they think so many devastations or annihilations have come and I'll somehow still find happiness in the material world and stick here a little longer. And when we go out and reach out with the Bhagavad Gita, they say they don't have time.
Yeah, pashyanapi napashyati. It's the way they see but don't see. Right? Yes. Oh, wait. 1, 2, and then now 3. Go ahead. Even there is a place that's in Northern California. It's called Paradise, but it burned down to the ground. I mean, I feel sorry for the people there, but at first they're heavily traumatized by that, but there's a way in which a lot of them are staying. I saw a documentary about it, and they were just so attached to living there, and the other places too now that are getting hit by huge storms and things like that. This is our land. We're going to rebuild. We're not going to take this sitting down. We're going to make a comeback. So please go ahead.
I was thinking that the nice thing about time being cyclical rather than linear is that it means that we always get another chance.
Yeah.
So always the Ferris wheel's going to come around again. You got another chance to get off.
Yeah.
And then from the perspective of Lord Vishnu, the Lord, it's all happening so fast. This Lord Brahma's lifetime is just a fraction of a second. And then we're hearing about how the whole thing is going up in smoke, and the sages like Bhrigu are fleeing to the higher planets, Janarloka, and then it all gets flooded. But then Mahavishnu, he's just lying back on Anantashesh. She's just chilling there in the waves of the waters of devastation, and it's totally cool. Like, yep, this is what it is.
Yeah, and it's amazing too that they take so much trouble on a regular basis to move out because of the unstable nature of the material world. As it's described in the 5th canto, how the inhabitants of certain planets rise to higher levels of the universe. They take billions and billions of airplanes just to move up to the next place. Yeah, and it really gives perspective. Yashaika nishvasita kāla matavalambhya, that, as you say, Krishna is just his breath. It's one of the ways one can overcome the great anxiety of material life. Is, you said it, who said it? This too shall pass. And everything's insignificant. Prabhupada once, in the material world, was telling some of the devotees what the structure of the universe is and how large it was, and they're coming down to 26 Second Avenue, and here we are, and we think everything we're doing is so important. Of course it was. But there's a way that these verses give us a lot of perspective of how quickly our lives are going. Anyone from outside? What? Online? Go ahead.
Divyanga Prabhu on Facebook says,
Divyanga?
I miss Keshav Bharat Maharaj.
Yeah.
And there's another Prabhu who says, always mind-boggling how vast the universal coverings are relative to the inner space.
What?
Always mind-boggling how vast the universal coverings are relative to the inner space.
Yeah, mind-boggling. Here's something more about Mahatattva. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in 3 phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane, and are all based on the material elements, gross senses, and mental speculations. The false ego is represented in the three different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. This is just catching the definition when things are beginning to manifest from the Mahatattva. But it's called the great causal truth. Then it transforms. Yes.
So there was this purport to 1129, and the verse is saying, when the night of Brahma ensues, all the three worlds are out of sight, and the sun and the moon are without glare, just as in the due course of an ordinary night. Purport: it is understood that the glare of the sun and the moon disappear from the sphere of the three worlds, but the sun and the moon themselves do not vanish. They appear in the remaining portion of the universe, which is beyond the sphere of the three worlds. The portion in dissolution remains without sun rays or moon glow. It all remains dark and full of water, and there are indefatigable winds, as explained in the following verses. So, it's just, is there an explanation that can be elaborated on this?
What's the verse number?
1129.
Like where did the sun and moon go? 'Cause generally they just go
Yeah.
three planetary systems.
11.29.
Yeah, pretty hard to find a place to park the sun.
Yeah, I'm thinking like how
You can't.
it's saying that the glare of
No,
the
it's just-
sun and the moon disappear.
Yeah, because the sun moves or is not part of the dissolution, it says.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing.
Let's see.
Because I remember distinctly as a kid the ways when we went to those, what are they called? Where you go in and they have the screen on the ceiling, planetarium. Remember going to those and that talk about how the sun become a red giant and burn itself out? And my brother and I, as kids, we were all worried about it. Now it turns out it doesn't even do that. Just so much speculation from the side of the scientists about what happens. Is there anything in there, Samir Prash? No. We'll keep looking.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you on that one. Yes.
Section of the conversation actually reminded me of how Srila Prabhupada often talks about how Krishna is always manifest, like the sun is always manifest in some place, but it's not like his immediate absence from the place is talking about that Krishna, the sun of Krishna doesn't ever set. Just like the sun in the material world, it's always present somewhere, and it's daylight somewhere, although it may be dark here now. It reminded me of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I just was thinking about, I guess it's related to the last point that Devavrata Prabhu also spoke about. There is the verse in the Bhagavad Gita in the 10th chapter, 7th verse.
Keep it close.
One who is factually convinced of this opulence and mystic power of mind engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. And we also heard in one discussion from one sadhu about the realization of the Kevala Ishvarya Anubhavika, I guess it's called. And he spoke about the more one understands the magnanimity of the Lord, so the more one he feels naturally small and humble, and so he does engage in the service. And I have also one question. In the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that Sankhya Yoga and the devotional service, one who sees them equally, so that person understands it in full, kind of. But how can we understand this? point of seeing the Sankhya Yoga and devotional service as one and all. Or equal.
In the sense that the goal is the same.
But the process is just different, right?
Yes. The process is different, but the goal is the same. And if it's theistic Sankhya, then there's a way in which you come to the ultimate goal by Sankhya, which would lead you to the different levels of devotional service as well, which we're coming to in the next section, not the next chapter, but the next section, as you well know, when Kapila Dev gives his actual teachings of Sankhya. Do you have a verse number? I can read you the purport if you like. Yeah. 5.5. Tell you what I'm going to do for you. Bhagavad Gita 5:5. Yat sankhya prapate stanam tat yoga abhigamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yapashyati sapashyati. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. That the position reached by means of analytical study means the goal. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there's no difference between the conclusions reached by the two processes. By Sankhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the supreme whole. Consequently, the spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relation with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position. In the first process, Sankhya, one has to become detached from matter. And in devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna consciousness. Factually, both processes are the same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment and the other process appears to involve attachment. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see this sees things as they are. Om Tat Sat. Yes? Okay.
That's kind of what we're seeing here, because the chapter is about time and the atoms and measurements and all these things. It's kind of like Sankhya. It's analytical study of the material universe. And then we're seeing that behind it all is the Lord. Controlling it all is the Lord. When it's all gone, what's left is the Lord. So then, He's the cause of all causes. And like he says, Aham sarvasya prabhava matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. That someone who understands this situation that we just read, they're going to understand that the only object of worship is the Lord, and they're going to engage in devotional service. So that's the goal of Sankhya.
Yeah. You sift through it all, and then you come to the simpler conclusion at the end. Yes, Devavrata.
Within the context of everything that's being spoken right now, it's reminding me of this one devotee in Los Angeles. He had gone out on book distribution like 325 days of the year, and he was recognized for doing that. And then Mother Tadit approached him. She said, "That's amazing, you went on so many days of book distribution, it's incredible." He goes, "Well, I have nothing else to do." So I was just thinking, when one comes to this understanding through Sankhya, one comes to the conclusion, I have nothing else to do but to engage in the service of Krishna.
Yeah. That's right. Okay. Anything from outside? Hi.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
In 11th or 21st sloka, it was mentioned that in the Satya millennium, mankind properly and completely maintained the principles of religion. But in other millennium, religion gradually decreased by one part as a religion was proportionately admitted. Like I'm wondering, our consciousness is based on our karma. Does that mean that in each millennium, depending on karma, all the people with good karma will be sent in Satya Yuga and bad karma will be sent to Kali Yuga, something like that?
Something like that, but there is some variation. For instance, in Bhagavatam, Karbhajana Muni says, Kalim sabhajayant yarya guna gya sarabhagina yatra sankirtana neva sarvaswarto vilabhyate, that people who really know what's going on, they worship Kali Yuga because they know that in Kali Yuga you can get everything. All arthas. Kalim sabhajayant yarya guna gya, the Aryas, the people who are really elevated in consciousness, know Kali Yuga as being worshipable. Kalim sabhajayant yarya guna gya sarabhagina, that the essence of everything, yatra sankirtane naiva, is attained by sankirtan. Sarvaswarta, all the arthas, sarvaswarta bilabhyate, are attained in Kali Yuga through sankirtan. So you may say, it's unfortunate to be in Kali. You're not saying that. You're saying, is it people's karma? Yeah, based on the previous activities, we get placed accordingly. Urdvam gachati satvasta madhyam tishtanti rajasa jaganya vritti gunasta auto gachanti tamasa. That if you're in the mode of goodness, you're going to land in Satya Yuga. In Karanam Gunasangosya Sarasadyoni Janmasu, good and bad comes to you because of a cause of your association with the modes of material nature. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yes?
This just made me think of His Holiness Varshana Maharaj in New Vrindavan. Whenever someone usually refers to Kali Yuga, Maharaj will always say, this is Prema Yuga.
I think Bana brought that up in class. Not the Prema Yuga thing, but the fortune of landing in Kali Yuga. Would you be open to hearing a couple more verses?
Yes.
It's quite amazing. Chapter 12, Creation of the Kumaras and Others. Sri Maitreya said, O learned Vidura, so far I have explained to you the glories of the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this feature of kāla. Now you can hear from me about the creation of Brahma, the reservoir of all Vedic knowledge. Brahma first created the nescient engagements like self-deception, the sense of death, anger after frustration, the sense of false ownership, and the illusory bodily conception or forgetfulness of one's real identity. Before the factual creation of the living entities in different varieties of species, the conditions under which a living being in the material world has to live were created by Brahma, Unless the living entity forgets his real identity, it is impossible for him to live in the material conditions of life. Therefore, the first condition of material existence is forgetfulness of one's real identity. And by forgetting one's real identity, one is sure to be afraid of death. Although a pure living soul is deathless and birthless, this false identification with material nature is the cause of false ownership of things which are offered by the arrangement of superior control. All material resources are offered to the living entity for his peaceful living and for the discharge of the duties of self-realization and conditioned life. But due to false identification, the conditioned soul becomes entrapped by the sense of false ownership of the property of the Supreme Lord. It is evident from this verse that Brahma himself is a creation of the Absolute Truth, and the 5 kinds of nescience which condition the living entities in material existence are creations of Brahma. It is simply ludicrous to think the living entity to be equal with the Supreme Being, when one can understand that the conditioned souls are under the influence of Brahma's magic wand. Patanjali also accepts that there are 5 kinds of nescience as mentioned herein. Seeing such a misleading creation as a sinful task, Brahma did not feel much pleasure in his activity, and therefore he purified himself by meditation on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then he began another term of creation. Although he created the different influences of nescience, Lord Brahma was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task, but he had to do it because most of the conditioned souls wanted it to be so. Lord Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 that he is present in everyone's heart and is helping everyone to either remember or forget. The question may be raised, why the Lord, who is all merciful, helps one to remember and another to forget? Actually, his mercy is not exhibited in partiality towards one and enmity towards another. The living entity, as part and parcel of the Lord, is partially independent because he partially possesses all the qualities of the Lord. Anyone who has some independence may sometimes misuse it due to ignorance. When the living entity prefers to misuse his independence and glide down towards nescience, the all-merciful Lord first of all tries to protect him from the trap. But when the living entity persists in gliding down to hell, the Lord helps him to forget his real position. The Lord helps the falling living entity glide down to the lowest point just to give him the chance to see if he is happy by misusing his independence. Almost all the conditioned souls who are rotting in the material world are misusing their independence, and therefore 5 kinds of nescience are imposed upon them. As an obedient servitor of the Lord, Brahma creates all these as a matter of necessity, but he is not happy in doing so because a devotee of the Lord naturally does not like to see anyone falling down from his real position. Persons who do not care for the path of realization get full facilities from the Lord for executing their proclivities to the fullest extent, and Brahma helps in that procedure without fail. In the beginning, Brahma created 4 great sages named Sanak, Sananda, Sanatan, and Sanat Kumara. All of them were unwilling to adopt materialistic activities because they were highly elevated due to their semens flowing upwards. Although Brahma created the principle of nescience as a matter of necessity for those living entities who were destined to ignorance by the will of the Lord, he was not satisfied in performing such a thankless task. He therefore created 4 principles of knowledge, Sankhya, or empirical philosophy for the analytical study of material conditions, yoga or mysticism for liberation of the pure soul from material bondage, vairagya, the acceptance of complete detachment from material enjoyment in life to elevate oneself to the highest spiritual understanding, and tapas, or the various kinds of voluntary austerities performed for spiritual perfection. Brahma created the four great sages, Sanak, Sananda, Sanatana, and Sanat, to entrust them with these four principles of spiritual advancement. What are the four principles? Correct. And they inaugurated their own spiritual party, or sampradaya, known as the Kumara Sampradaya, or later on as the Nimbarka Sampradaya, for the advancement of bhakti. All of these great sages became great devotees, for without devotional service to the personality of Godhead, one cannot achieve success in any activity of spiritual value. Text 5. Brahma spoke to his sons after generating them. My dear sons, he said, now generate progeny. But due to their being attached to Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they aimed at liberation, and therefore they expressed their unwillingness. Purport. The four sons of Brahma, the Kumaras, declined to become family men, even on the request of their great father, Brahma. Those who are serious about getting released from material bondage should not be entangled in the false relationship of family bondage. People may ask how the Kumaras could refuse the orders of Brahma, who is their father and above all the creator of the universe. The reply is that one who is Vasudeva Parayana, or seriously engaged in the devotional service of the personality of Godhead Vasudeva, need not care for any other obligation. It is enjoined in the Bhagavatam 11.541, Devarshi bhuta manurnam pitrinam naking karonayam ranicha rajan sarvatmadaya sharanam sharanyam kato mukundam parihritakartam. Anyone who has completely given up all worldly relationships and has taken absolute shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, who gives us salvation and who alone is fit to be taken shelter of, is no longer a debtor or servant of anyone, including the demigods, forefathers, sages, other living entities, relatives, and members of human society. Thus, there was nothing wrong in the acts of the Kumaras when they refused their great father's request that they become family men. Two more verses. On the refusal of the sons to obey the order of their father, there was much anger generated in the mind of Brahma, which he tried to control and not express. Brahma is the director in charge of the mode of passion of material nature. Therefore, it was natural for him to become angry on the refusal of his sons to obey his order. Although the Kumaras were right in such acts of refusal, Brahma, being absorbed in the mode of passion, could not check his passionate anger. He did not express it, however, because he knew that his sons were far enlightened in spiritual advancement, and thus he should not express his anger before them. Although he tried to curb his anger, it came out from between his eyebrows, and a child of mixed blue and red was immediately generated. The face of anger is the same whether exhibited due to ignorance or knowledge. Although Brahma tried to curb his anger, he could not do so, even though he is the Supreme Being. Such anger, in its true color, came from between the eyebrows of Brahma as Rudra in a mixed color of blue, ignorance, and red, passion, because anger is the product of passion and ignorance. And we'll leave it there for today for the reading of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan, Shri Shri Radha Govinda, Shri Shri Radha Gopinath, 18 Thakur, Gauriyaki Karyachana Atmasat 18 Chanan Vandam Tine Moranat. If you so desire, Please let us remember the temporality of the material world and the great benediction in Kali Yuga. Please empower us to take advantage of all the gifts that are being given to us through our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada from the great Sampradaya coming from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Gaur Premanande Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bol Hari Bo Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. The Govardhan a cappella choir. Vanchakalptarishcha kripasindave patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande.